The only way out of the labyrinth of suffering is to forgive. Thomas Edison's last words were, "It's very beautiful over there. I don't know where there is, but I believe it's somewhere, and I hope it's beautiful." When adults say teenagers think they are invincible with that sly, stupid smile on their faces, they don't know how right they are. We need never be hopeless because we can never be irreparably broken. We think that we are invincible because we are. We cannot be born and we cannot die. Like all energy, we can only change shapes and sizes and manifestations. They forget that when they get old, they get scared of losing and failing. But that part of us greater than the sum of our parts cannot begin and cannot end, and so it cannot fail. So I walked back to my room and collapsed on the bottom bunk, thinking that if people were rain, I was drizzle and she was a hurricane. Imagining the future is a kind of nostalgia. You spend your whole life stuck in the labyrinth, thinking about how you'll escape it one day and how awesome it will be, and imagining that future keeps you going, but you never do it. You just use the future to escape the present. When I look at my room, I see a girl who loves books. I wanted so badly to lie down next to her on the couch, to wrap my arms around her and sleep. Not fuck, like in those movies. Not even have sex. Just sleep together in the most innocent sense of the phrase. But I lacked the courage, and she had a boyfriend, and I was gawky and she was gorgeous, and I was hopelessly boring, and she was endlessly fascinating. So I walked back to my room and collapsed on the bottom bunk, thinking that if people were rain, I was drizzle and she was hurricane. They love their hair because they're not smart enough to love something more interesting. What is an instant death anyway? How long is an instant? Is it 1 second? 10? The pain of those seconds must have been awful as her heart burst and her lungs collapsed and there was no air and no blood to her brain and only raw panic. What the hell is instant? Nothing is instant. Instant rice takes 5 minutes, instant pudding an hour. I doubt that an instant of blinding pain feels particularly instantaneous. What you must understand about me is that I'm a deeply unhappy person. It always shocked me when I realized that I wasn't the only person in the world who thought and felt such strange and awful things. François Rabelais, he was a poet, and his last words were, "I go to seek a great perhaps. That's why I'm going. So I don't have to wait until I die to start seeking a great perhaps." At some point, you just pull off the Band-Aid and it hurts, but then it's over and you're relieved. And then something invisible snapped inside her, and that which had come together commenced to fall apart. Sometimes you lose a battle, but mischief always wins the war. I am going to take this bucket of water and pour it on the flames of hell, and then I am going to use this torch to burn down the gates of paradise so that people will not love God for want of heaven or fear of hell, but because He is God. I just did some calculations and I've been able to determine that you're full of shit. I found myself thinking about President William McKinley, the third American president to be assassinated. He lived for several days after he was shot, and towards the end, his wife started crying and screaming, "I want to go too! I want to go too!" And with his last measure of strength, McKinley turned to her and spoke his last words. "We are all going." That didn't happen, of course. Things never happened the way I imagined them. We are all going, I thought, and it applies to turtles and turtlenecks, Alaska the girl, and Alaska the place. Because nothing can last, not even the earth itself. The Buddha said that suffering was caused by desire, we'd learned, and that the cessation of desire meant the cessation of suffering. When you stopped wishing things wouldn't fall apart, you'd stop suffering when they did. We need never be hopeless because we can never be irreparably broken. It's not life or death, the labyrinth, suffering, doing wrong, and having wrong things happen to you. That's the problem. Bolivar was talking about the pain, not about the living or dying. How do you get out of the labyrinth of suffering? You spend your whole life stuck in the labyrinth, thinking about how you'll escape one day and how awesome it will be, and imagining that future keeps you going. But you never do it. You just use the future to escape the present. I wanted to be one of those people who have streaks to maintain, who scorch the ground with their intensity. But for now, at least I knew such people. And they needed me, just like comets need tails. If only we could see the endless string of consequences that result from our smallest actions. But we can't know better until knowing better is useless.